So what are you doing this time on your visit to Japan?
I am teaching at Under the Light on my visit to Japan this time.
It's great.
Yeah.
And what type of classes or workshops are you teaching this time?
I'm teaching Ashtanga Yoga, which is what I normally teach. But I think what's actually really cool about the workshop this time is that on Saturday night we're doing a charity fundraiser to raise some money for the tsunami relief here in Japan. And that was really actually important for me if I was going to come to Japan this year to do something that would be beneficial for the people of Japan rather than just myself.
Sure. And you've been coming to Japan for a while now. Have you noticed much of a change or an evolution in the Tokyo yoga community?
I think that the Japanese students are such hard workers, and it's really inspirational for me to be around them and to see the way that their dedication and their sincerity really pays off in the practice. And I'm really inspired by that. I think they're really amazing students here in Japan.
And one thing I keep hearing from visiting foreign yoga teachers is that it's a much higher ratio of women to men in Japan compared to some other countries. Do you find that in your classes, or?
Well, I'm teaching this weekend, so I'd have to answer you on Sunday night. But anyhow, I took Kranti's class the last 2 days, my first class, and I actually didn't notice anything different than other ratios between men and women in other studios. I mean, there's more women that do yoga all over the world.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of cool, actually. And I didn't notice anything particularly different about it here in Japan, other than that just everyone seemed to be pretty awesome.
And in terms of Ashtanga here in Japan, do you find that there's a different flavor or spin on it compared to some other places you've seen it practiced?
People here are very traditional and dedicated, and I don't think there's anything that's really, different. The Ashtanga Yoga method is the same wherever you go. And if there's small differences, it's more just the personality of maybe the teacher coming through. But I really do believe that what's amazing about the Ashtanga Yoga method is that its heart is really the same wherever you go, as long as it's traditional Ashtanga. And then if it's not traditional Ashtanga, or if it's not Ashtanga, it's not Ashtanga.
And in terms of your personal practice, it must be quite challenging keeping it up with your hectic schedule and traveling across time zones. Do you have any tips for people who would like to keep up their practice while traveling?
Everyone almost always asks me that. Are you do you wake up and not know where you are or something like that? And I love traveling, and I think that even if I weren't traveling and teaching, I would still love to travel. I always love to travel. I love seeing new places. I love experiencing, new cultures and new cities, that sort of thing. So for my personal practice, one of the things that's really important is that, when you arrive to a new place, do your practice right away. Get on the time zone that you're there. Even if you feel really groggy, if you need a nap in the afternoon, just get up and do your practice in the morning to get yourself set up for the time zone as much as you can. And, if you need a nap or something like that, then that's cool. Occasionally, and I don't usually do this, but occasionally, if I'm traveling, I came from Europe to Asia, and, when I landed, I had a coffee, which I don't normally do. I have a lot of energy normally, and normally I'm not drinking coffee, only tea. Not that I have anything against coffee, I just never like the taste of it.
So you came directly from China to Japan this time.
Yeah.
What was it like in China?
Well, China was awesome. I mean, I went to Hong Kong first, which was quite tropical, and the combination of the mountains and then the water there is just so beautiful. I mean, I'm from Miami, so I really love the tropical humidity and the ocean and this sort of thing. I absolutely loved Hong Kong. It was just this amazing experience of people and cultures, and Hong Kong really felt like the capital of Southeast Asia. There's so many different cultures and everyone coming together, and the studio was so wonderful. I was teaching at Yoga Mala there, and it was awesome. And then when I went to Beijing, I went to Fine Yoga, which is run by Anders and Sherry, who run the studio there. And then I got to see some really amazing historical things, like the Forbidden City and the Great Wall of China is like a wonder of the world. So I'm really, really thankful for that experience. I'm also really thankful for the students that came, because without them, I wouldn't really have a purpose of going. So I'm really grateful for the students that came to my classes.
And a lot of people in the West who haven't really traveled to Asia, they think of Asia as being one kind of big region, and they talk about Asians.
Right.
How would you describe the differences that you noticed between these different countries within Asia?
Wow, I mean that's a huge. I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to be able to talk about the differences between the cultures in Asia, but they're very different. I mean, I think maybe if you've never been to Asia, you could try to experience the differences between the food, and that would give you a clue to the differences of the different cultures. Like Thai food is dramatically different than Chinese food, dramatically different than Japanese food. And a lot of people think of India as part of Asia, but India is really its own experience, and I think that's important for people to know. That being said, I think you could say the same thing if you've never been to Europe. Like Europe is clumped into one thing, particularly, as an American, before I went to Europe, there's often this idea of, a European sensibility. And there is this idea of, an ethos that ties together Europe. Just like I'd imagine there's probably a particular ethos that ties together Asia. But at the same time, there are different, pockets of individuality. And the US is just like that too. There's you can tell I'm American, for sure. If you're not American, you probably easily tell that I'm American. It's a comment that I get pretty often when I'm American. But within the U.S., there's at the same time a lot of, there's differences that you can notice once you get, you get more subtlety and your experience is more nuanced.
In terms of the yoga community or the people that show up in your classes and workshops, have you noticed a difference in the way they approach their practice compared to your students back home in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the students in Japan are really, really dedicated. They're really hard workers. I mean, the same thing's true in Hong Kong and Beijing too. I was actually really impressed with the students in Poland this year. It's my first visit to Poland, and I was just really touched by how hard the students work there and how much of their hearts they put into the practice. Actually, the studio there made a small clip about the whole experience, and I mean, it was a really touching, moving experience for me there. And I love my students in Miami, and I think that the experience of having a yoga center, building long-term relationships with students is really, really important. I'm really also thankful that I have a really great team of teachers and staff at Miami Life Center that are able to really keep the business running, because I am really committed to teaching and traveling and teaching and helping spread the message of Ashtanga Yoga around the world. And that for me is the most inspirational thing. The idea that more people could get inspired to practice. Whether you take a class with me or not, it's not really the point. I would love for more people to practice yoga. So we could have, I don't know, imagine if half the planet was practicing yoga. Imagine how much more peaceful and conscious the interactions of humanity would be if all of our politicians had a daily spiritual practice, and a constant awareness practice. What kind of world would we live in then? That inspires me. That really turns me on. The idea of increasing consciousness. And you kind of got to do it one person at a time. So, yoga practice, I think, is a really great tool for that.
And Ashtanga has a reputation of being very physically demanding. Is Ashtanga something which you would recommend to, say, people who are, past a certain age? Would you say that it's more for younger people, or can it be adapted? Or
I kind of think that the people who should try Ashtanga Yoga are the ones who like it, and it doesn't really matter what age or how old or young, or if you're tall or small or Japanese or German or American or Canadian or whatever, South American, it doesn't matter. If you like the practice, I think that's the number one qualification. I mean, we've seen in Mysore a woman who's 90 years old starting the practice. She came with her daughter who was 60, and they both came to Mysore for the first time. So I really think if you like Ashtanga Yoga, then you do Ashtanga Yoga. If you're inspired by a different type of spiritual practice, then you do that. It's really about the person, what they're inspired by. And that inspiration is kind of the seed of awakening that we're really looking to cultivate in the yoga practice, whether that's with the Ashtanga Yoga method or some other style of yoga, really irrelevant to the total journey of the practice.
How can people get into getting up early and going to practice? Were you born a morning person?
We're just talking about this. I love to sleep, actually. But I really look forward to when I have a day off and I can sleep 10 hours and just really sleep in. So I don't really like to get up early. I kind of dread going to Mysore and the idea of getting up in the middle of the night and practicing yoga at 4:30 in the morning. But I think that what inspires you to do it is the transformation that's possible. You experience, how good you feel when you're you're doing the practice. And particularly in a place like Mysore, when you're there for the devotional purpose of doing your practice, you get up when you need to get up. It doesn't matter. You know? Yeah.
A lot of Japanese are increasingly interested in traveling abroad and going to Mysore and places like that.
Yeah.
Would you have any advice for people who are thinking of making the trip to Mysore?
Yeah. Buy your ticket today. Think about it later. If you think about it too much, and then you can develop fear around the practice around it. Some people don't want to go all the way to Mysore. Could go to Goa, do a 2-week retreat or something like this. If people don't want to travel as far, there are great retreat centers in Thailand. Like Yoga Thailand is really beautiful. Maybe it feels safer. I think I'm teaching in both of those places next year. But they're like Bali has a great Ashtanga Yoga Center. I think Prem and Heather teaching. I mean, there's places to go if you're afraid of India or if you want an India light experience. But if you have any little place inside of your heart that's thinking of going to Mysore, I mean, there's no other place like it in the world. I would just say, buy your ticket today. Figure it out later.
And coming from Miami and going to all these different places that you travel to, how would you describe to somebody who's never been to Miami what to expect from your hometown?
Wow. It's a beautiful beach. I love the beach in Miami. I think that for me is home, It's beautiful white sands and sort of Caribbean turquoise water. And, for me it's really about being in this tropical environment and living and working so close to the beach, and at the same time there's this culture of outdoor cafes and being outside and beautiful weather all year round, and that's actually really, really important for me to have a home in a place that feels beautiful and feels tropical and sunny, and I really love that part of Miami. So one of the things that's really wonderful, you're thinking about, say, coming to Miami, and if you wanted to combine that with yoga, you would also get a wonderful experience, in the tropics. It's usually good enough to leave with a good suntan if you come down there.
In Japan recently, veganism has started to take off and develop, and I know it's something which has been, a big thing in Miami and in the US for some time.
Yeah.
Are you vegan yourself? Or?
I'm not vegan, but I'm vegetarian. And my choice to be vegetarian is the ethical choice to be vegetarian is. I don't force other people to take the decision, but I do believe if you're practicing yoga, we should try to align ourselves with that basic principle of ahimsa, and we should try to have ahimsa pratishtayam, ground the tradition of ahimsa, so that we can experience its true benefits. And one of the first steps, I think, of that is being able to have a non-violent relationship with our choices in food. So if we don't need to kill other beings to sustain our body. We don't need to. And I mean, I love animals, and I always have. And it breaks my heart to think about the notion of animal suffering. So I think that for me, the ethical choice to be vegetarian is a really important choice as a yoga practitioner, both for myself personally, and I believe strongly that this is also the best choice for the earth, because the amount of resources that it takes to create a life whose only purpose is to die for consumption, for taste, I think is not the most efficient use of our resources here on Earth. So for me, the ethical choice to be vegetarian involves that, and I choose vegetarian rather than vegan because then that's more feasible with travel, and I try to choose organic dairy products whenever possible because I again believe in the ethical treatment of animals as much as possible.
What's it been like for you coming to Asia and trying to maintain being vegetarian?
It's been wonderful. I mean, in Hong Kong, for example, the studio took me to the Lakcha Tea House in Hong Kong Garden, and they have a monastery nearby that makes vegetarian dim sum, and they bring it down every day. So I had this amazing Hong Kong-style vegetarian dim sum lunch, and these really exquisite, Chinese tea from the ancient traditions in China, and I was blown away. It was awesome.
How about in Japan? What do you eat here?
We went to, where did we go today? Italian place?
Today, yes.
Actually, the little hotel that I'm staying at, they're making breakfast for me every morning.
Oh.
It's not a huge breakfast, like an egg and like a little piece of bread and some fruit. But what I'm actually really touched by is how much they're caring for every little detail. I mean, that's amazing. You know, that I came kind of after they're normally serving the man today. It was like, well, washed his hands before preparing my plate. And I felt bad. I was kind of like, you just hand it to me. I don't, need you to go through all. But you could see that he wanted to. So that was really touching.
And for yoga teachers, perhaps back in the US who are watching this, and they're thinking of, they'd like to perhaps travel to Asia and maybe visit Japan. Do you have any advice? Things to expect or things to be aware of?
I think that you would probably want to have a local host or friend who speaks a bit of Japanese that could show you around. To feel, I really can imagine just being a complete tourist here and not having a contact or whatnot to sort of show you around. I think everyone speaks quite good English and is willing to sort of do their best to show you around. But if you have a friend that can help you around, I think that would be the best possible. My grandfather's Japanese, and I came to Japan often as a little child and have quite strong memories of visits to Japan and my family there. But again, I had a family taking me around. So if possible, I would recommend maybe have a friend to visit. It's kind of nicer when you know someone in the city that you're going to.
Japan is well known for being a good destination for shoppers. What do you like to buy when you come to Japan?
Oh, shopping. I feel like I'm half yogi and half American girl, and sometimes when I'm out shopping, I feel more like the American girl than yogi. So I like to shop. And this trip in particular, I've bought too many pairs of shoes, I think. I bought shoes in Hong Kong, and I bought some really beautiful shoes today, too. So I think that what's cool about Japan for me is I'm smaller, so they actually have sizes and things like that here. A lot of times when I'm traveling, even if I see things I like, they don't fit me anyway. So it's kind of cool to be in a country where things fit. Yeah.
What are you going to take home to your husband?
What am I gonna? I was just talking to him this morning, and I've been looking around, and actually, there's a pair of shoes that he's been looking at that he really wants to get. And so I was talking to him. I said, I could look around and find a present, but I'd really like to just buy you these shoes that you love. So I was just talking to him about that today. So I'm gonna buy him a pair of shoes that he loves.
And what's one thing that you haven't done yet in Japan that you really want to do, if possible, this trip?
This trip. Well, I would love to see the view from the Park Hyatt, and that's kind of maybe what we're going to do tonight, because it's an iconic hotel. It's been in movies. The hotel is a movie star, so I thought that would be pretty cool. I think it's in the movie Lost in Translation.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe some other movies too, so that I think would be pretty fun.